Going to close out this show with a little discussion about the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are 1 week into training camp out in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Fortunately, was able to get out there on Back Together Saturday, this Saturday, to watch a little bit of practice. It was football in shorts, so not a lot that you're going to glean from that. Not a lot that you're going to glean from really any of week one, even the first padded practice. There's not a lot you can take from that. We're really going to start to learn about these guys over the next week, and certainly once you get into preseason action starting next Thursday. But it was a fun atmosphere. It was definitely different. We've heard a lot of people talking about, it's different under Mike McCarthy. And one of the biggest things that I noticed that was different is when anyone, but specifically when I would go to any training camp, you always knew where Mike Tomlin was. And it took me a solid 15 minutes to find Mike McCarthy on Saturday morning. I was looking around. I was like, I don't know where he's at. And even my wife, who was there with me, goes, well, where's Mike McCarthy? And I was like, I don't know. Like, he might have been working with somebody off the field before practice. He might have been working with somebody, on the other field. But the point is, Mike McCarthy is not out there to be seen. I'm not saying Mike Tomlin was, but just as a result of his personality, you couldn't help but notice Mike Tomlin. You did not notice Mike McCarthy all that much in practice, which I think is a good thing, because that means he trusts, as Zach Smith said last week when we had him on Burgh Breakdown, that means he trusts his other coaches to just handle their business while he goes and does specific things. And I think that's something that most people will agree we have not seen out of Mike Tomlin and his staffs pretty much the entire latter half of his tenure in Pittsburgh. But outside of that, Travis Homer was out there very early. I thought that was interesting. On the jugs machine, has a strange warm-up routine, I think, to say the least, but interesting is certainly, I think, the overarching word for that one. Drew Aller was down there on the field early, and he looked really good, as everybody has mentioned. Roman Wilson is off to a good start, which I think a lot of people, I don't want to say expected, because there are some people that were out on Roman Wilson coming into this year, but he is very good in training camp typically, and that continues under Mike McCarthy. We'll see, hopefully, if that can translate into the regular season. And the other thing I'll mention is Darnell Washington is just a monster. Anytime I see him in person, it's just accentuated how much more of a massive monster he is than even other players on the offensive line and other players just in the NFL in general. So excited to see him healthy, and excited to see what he's able to do in Mike McCarthy's offense. But if we're talking about the biggest winner of Pittsburgh Steelers training camp week number 1, I don't think there is any question that it's cornerback Asante Samuel Jr. I mean, the opportunity was there from the jump. Joey Porter Jr. is on the PUP list, but I think we all know that there's a little bit more about the contract than there is about the injury when it comes to Joey Porter Jr. Not only that, Jalen Ramsey is on the PUP list. I understand Ramsey is likely going to be a slot corner guy, but that's somebody who could take away outside corner reps in training camp. That is not there. So Asante Samuel Jr. gets the opportunity, and so far, he is taken advantage. I mean, he's been highlighted by pretty much every Pittsburgh writer that he has been a main camp standout, including, and not writer, but he's also been highlighted by Mike McCarthy as being a camp standout, telling Jeff Hathorn of 93.7 The Fan, quote, "He's frankly been one of my favorite players since I arrived here." McCarthy would go on to talk about how hard he works and the way that he has made an impression on him in the early going here. So I'm going to temper my excitement just a little bit because, well, it's football in shorts. In some instances, it's not even football in helmets. We saw a practice in week 1 where they just wore hats doing a walkthrough of sorts. So yes, we have to wait to see until the pads come on, and also we have to wait to see until live reps start flying in the preseason. But I think it would be huge if Asante Samuel could step up and be a very reliable backup to Joey Porter and Jamel Dean. If you look at the Steelers last season, they finished 29th in pass defense. And not only that, they have not been a top 10, excuse me, they haven't been a top 10 pass defense since 2021. So in order to get back there, I think they have the pieces. But the question was, do they have the depth? Because you're going to deal with injuries. You're going to deal, I mean, we already are seeing that right now. Jalen Ramsey's out. Joey Porter's out. Who steps up? You have Jaquan Brisker and Deshaun Elliott on the back end. You do have Brandon Echols as your slot corner, and he was very good in that role last year. You do have Jamel Dean. That's the reason you went out and you acquired him. But you still need somebody to fill those roles whenever those players are injured. And getting a guy like Asante Samuel Jr. to kind of reach the potential that we all expected of him when he came into the league with the Chargers would be a massive boost to this Steelers secondary and would go a long way in getting them back on track going into the 2026 season. So the biggest winner of week 1 is Asante Samuel Jr. I would say Drew Aller is probably solidly in the number 2 spot, because when he was drafted, the question was why, right? Mike McCarthy, one of the first questions he was asked when he was hired to be the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers was, what do you think of Will Howard? And he said, I love Will Howard. And so does the Steelers fan base. Let's not leave that out of this as well. The Steelers fan base fell in love with Will Howard over the past year, believing that he could become the future of the Steelers despite being a 6th round pick in the 2025 draft. And then they use a 3rd rounder on Drew Aller, a quarterback who struggled in big moments at Penn State, a quarterback who was coming off of an injury in his final season of college football, who still, despite having a lot of physical attributes that could tell us that he could become a really good quarterback in the NFL, hadn't really been able to put it together. Still felt very green despite having multiple years of college football at a premium institution of that sport. So a lot of people had a poor opinion of Drew Aller because of that fact, that he wasn't able to really develop in those 3 years at Penn State. Well, it feels like he's developed more in the past 3 months with the Pittsburgh Steelers than he did in 3 years with the Penn State Nittany Lions. And that's not to say that Penn State can't develop quarterbacks. That's just to say that Mike McCarthy might have been able to unlock something that Penn State wasn't. Building it from the ground up. We saw it at the beginning of rookie minicamp, whenever he was going through the footwork drills, whenever he was going through Mike McCarthy's QB camp. And now you're already starting to see some returns on that. Similar to what I said with Asante Samuel Jr. You don't want to take too much from the first week of training camp. But a lot of people are starting to talk a little bit louder about Drew Aller being impressive at Pittsburgh Steelers camp. And anytime you're a quarterback, those whispers are going to get louder a lot easier. So the more he's able to stack days and stack weeks, and again, we'll see when the preseason starts, if he's able to put impressive performances on paper, I think a lot of people around the Steelers fan base are going to start to elevate him to the level that they have been holding Will Howard to over the past calendar year.